My name is Courtney Colson, a female to male to female detransitioner, and on this channel we try to figure out just what the hell is wrong with me. But on this episode we're trying to figure out just what the hell is wrong with your child. Or maybe yourself, maybe you are a person questioning your gender at this stage in your life and you're looking at all your options and you've come to the right place. As a detransitioner, I can speak to these issues a lot. And first of all, you're probably wondering why I'm dressed as Captain America, or Captain Carter, as you will. And I was watching that Marvel What If. My brother loves all that sort of stuff, so we watched that together. And I was really obsessed with Captain America before I transitioned. And I think that was my idea of what a man would be. And also in that movie, Steve Rogers goes from actually being my height and weight to being this super soldier. And testosterone was sold to me as the same thing. It's this magical treatment that will have no consequences or benefits, will be all amazing, all your problems will be gone. And it definitely wasn't that. I wasn't properly informed of the risks or the consequences or the realities of it even. And then when I watched that Marvel What If, where Agent Carter, played by Hayley Atwell, she becomes Captain America, or Captain Carter, instead of Steve Rogers. And it was sort of this realization that I went, oh yeah, you know, I was lacking so many female role models. You know, boys have all these characters to look up to, and even to this day, I relate more to male characters, but I'm mature enough to understand now that's not because I'm not a woman or I don't relate to women. It's because Hollywood's sexist and they often don't show women in diverse, realistic roles. And, you know, Captain Carter is a prime example of, or She-Hulk is another example of, well, women can't be big and butch and manly. That's disgusting. Why would you want to see a big muscular woman? I would in fact like to see a big muscular woman. Captain Carter, call me, I'm single. Yeah, I mean now I think the character I relate most to is MacGyver, and that's because how many female characters are resourceful and intelligent and multifaceted the way MacGyver is. There aren't many, especially I watch mostly 1980s media. And women are on the sidelines. Some of these female characters are really cool. There's Caitlin in Airwolf, Bonnie in Knight Rider. How much screen time do they get compared to the men? About 10%, 20% at most? If you're lucky, they'll have a feature episode once a season. So that really caused me as a child to feel like I'm not a girl and I don't fit in. And maybe you've heard this from your own kids or you've felt it yourself. So, yes, I know that I have a lot of parents who are viewing this channel and they are feeling lost and confused and they're concerned that their child, maybe before the age of 18, is demanding hormones and demanding surgery, these things that are going to cause lifelong changes and have risks all the way up to being fatal. And they're kids. I mean, you know what it was like when you were under the age of 18. You were an idiot. I was an idiot. I didn't know. The person I was before the age of 18 was absolutely not the person I am now. I always say I've been about 3 different people in my life. And yeah, I mean, that kid before I transitioned was very naive and didn't understand even my own biology or my own gender. So I was rushed into transitioning without anyone really investigating my background, why I was feeling this way, and that's probably an issue that you have seen as well, that all doctors and therapists are allowed to do these days, practically by law. I don't know if it is actually law, but it is basically. It's affirmation therapy, and affirmation therapy means that the patient's calling the shots. Even if they're a child, you go in there and say, I don't feel right in my body. Maybe I'm transgender. And they're like, okay, well, before we start you on hormones, We'll ask you some 10 cliche questions that are all about gender stereotypes. And that's all transgender really comes down to, as opposed to transsexual. So I'll make that distinction in a second. Non-binary. I don't believe that at all. I think that's complete nonsense. Anyone saying they're non-binary is just someone who is unusually butch or feminine for their sex. It's pure cultural stereotypes and this modern culture that these teenagers have created, where they have all these different genders and they feel their gender. Gender's not a thing you feel. It's simply not. So, transsexual. To me, transsexual is a mental illness, an extreme, persistent form of body dysmorphia, and it is physically based. Yes, they want to be perceived as the opposite sex, culturally and socially, but it is very much about making those physical changes. It's not about feeling your gender or feeling nothing as non-binary or agender people. I don't know, there's so many words. Yeah, transsexuality is more like, I would say Caitlyn Jenner or Buck Angel, these people who have very successfully transitioned to the opposite sex. There is no middle ground with them. They very much conform to the opposite sex. And I actually think, especially in the case of Buck Angel, I never would have believed he was ever a woman, and I don't think it suits him at all. So I'm not someone who says that transsexuality doesn't exist. I think it does. It's the same thing with transabled, people who have this fixation. They need to remove limbs or blind themselves or whatever. And I believe that that is also real. And these people, for whatever reason, do experience relief after transitioning or after removing limbs or whatever it is. However, for the vast majority of people, and there's studies to support this, most people don't experience improvement in their mental health after transitioning. Suicide rates don't improve. In fact, I think they got worse. And I'll put all the links in the footnotes. It's kind of hard for me to speak from memory and then give the citations, but yes, I will have a complete list of everything. So, if your child says that they are transgender, what should you do? Well, so most kids these days are going to be taught about trans identities from a very young age now, and I don't think that's appropriate personally, because children are still trying to get a sense of themselves. So introducing this concept that you can magically change into the opposite sex, it's a bit too complicated for them to understand. And here all these counter arguments of, no, kids are very understanding, they're very adaptable, they're non-judgmental. Yes, but there's all these therapists saying now that children don't really grasp this concept very well. They aren't mentally mature enough to deal with it. Whereas when it comes to homosexuality, that is normal. I mean, we don't understand the science of it, but we have observed homosexuality in many species. Penguins, gay. Humans, gay. Dolphins, very gay, very kinky too. But that's a fairly simple concept because children already understand adults come together and they make a family. So if it's a man and a woman or two women, two men, it's not really infringing upon the natural order of things, because you don't have to have any surgical alterations to adopt a child, for instance, or marry a person of the same sex. That it's there. You don't need any sort of surgical or medical interventions of any kind. Whereas when it comes to transsexuality, well, it's a mental illness. It's not a different way of being. It is a very obscure mental illness. But the thing is, they're probably going to hear about it anyway. So I think the best thing you can do is stay away from categorizing gender stereotypes. Never say something is girly, or this is for boys, this is for girls, this is, all that sort of stuff. And my mother claims that, oh no, I raised you the same as your brothers. No, absolutely not. My mother has very conservative ideas of what a woman should be. When I was a kid, though, I was allowed to, play Pokemon, play soccer. I was outdoorsy, very boyish, active. I was adventurous. I was into all these fandoms and all of that. That's not boyish, that's just what it is. We still, to this day, automatically label these things. Even I have these biases that I'm labeling it as boyish or a tomboy. We need to get right the hell away from that. We need to say that everyone can have whatever hobbies and interests they like. It's 2021 and we still haven't really figured that out. Instead, we're converting kids. It's like gay conversion therapy. Oh, you're a little butch little girl. Okay, well now you're a boy. We're gonna attach a penis to you. What the hell? That's disgusting. But it's happening all the time. I'm even hearing that kids are getting phalloplasties or vaginectomies or what have you, vaginoplasties, under the age of 18. Does that sound right to you? 18-year-olds, 21-year-olds, even 25-year-olds are still trying to figure their stuff out. I'd still argue, but yeah. You also have to take in consideration other psychological conditions. So if your kid has anxiety, depression, autism, ADHD, they are going to be more likely to feel gender dysphoria. And I myself used to have what we think is autism. It's hard to say for sure, but I was diagnosed with autism. Didn't have it before the age of 11. Fairly normal kid, and then just suddenly had all these symptoms, sensory issues, very rigid thinking. And I've now realized, you can watch all my other videos if you're interested, but yeah, in my case it was encephalitis. I needed my encephalitis diagnosed, but all they focused on was my fixation with being a boy or being a man. And a lot of that was just, I was autistic and I had, this rigid black and white thinking. I thought, well, girls are this, boys are this, and I'm not really a lot like girls, and I'm better off being a boy. I'm asexual. I was asexual at the time, no sexual drive, orientation, whatever. And I just went, well, I hate men paying attention to me. And I'm better off, I don't even want children. I'm better off just being a man. Life would be so much easier. And that's something you really have to investigate and talk to your kid about. This is, well, is it that you really need to be the opposite sex, or is it you hate how you're being treated because of your current sex? So, is it toxic masculinity? Is it misogyny? There's something about your gender that is causing you discomfort, but is it actually a medical condition or is it social dysphoria? And how do we manage that? And I realize now, red lippy, eye makeup, winged eyeliner, go to some classic car shows, and those dudes will let you sit in the cars. It's pretty great. So actually use the makeup, use the looks. There's some advantages. And, now I am trying to attract a girlfriend, so. And that's the other thing. It's hard to know for certain, but I didn't develop a sex drive until after I detransitioned. And then I realized, oh my God, I want children. I want a partner. So I could have just ruined my whole life right there. And then I changed overnight, practically. So if your child is under the age of 12, I would avoid even talking about transsexuality. I would encourage you to just raise them in a very neutral way. Don't say, this is for girls, this is for boys. Just let them be themselves. Don't put a label on it. If they insist on changing their name or pronouns, you can try to discourage it. Social transitioning can often lead to wanting to continue on. I've talked to many detransitioners. They send me private messages, and they'll say, "Oh, I socially transitioned when I was 12 or 13 or whatever, and now I'm 16. Now I'm 18, and I can't undo this. Oh no, I feel like I have to go ahead with it. I'm booked in for a surgery. I'm just going to head and do it because I'm just so embarrassed." That's the other thing too. I've had to get into child psychology a lot lately because you forget how influential embarrassment is. Children of that age are just so terrified of embarrassment or social rejection. It is social suicide. They think it's the end of the world. You as an adult have a very different perspective on embarrassment, I hope. That's another thing to take into account is once you allow a child to socially transition, they might feel backed into a corner. They might feel like an idiot. I was 28 when I detransitioned, and I still had that kind of doubt of, oh God, I made a huge mistake. Can I just take this back, or do I move to New Zealand and change my name again? How do I undo this? That you really got to check in with your kid, really have these conversations, even if they don't want to and they're trying to avoid it. Force them to articulate why they're feeling the way they are. And this is especially relevant in the next section. Teenagers. Who'd have them? Going through puberty is gross and weird and horrible, and no one likes it, and everyone feels like a freak. And you gotta let your kid know that. They might be looking around class going, oh, well, Tiana's already got titties, I got no titties, and I got shitty skin, and, Carrie over there, her skin glows, oh, I'm just a horrible demon creature, maybe I'd be better off as a boy. Or, for boys, it's like, oh God, I'm this gangly, tall, awkward thing, I wish I was graceful and beautiful, that kind of thing. It's this desire to escape this body that's changing, and it's the same, I actually think, when people are entering middle age. It's almost like you kind of have your teenage crisis, and then you have your midlife crisis where you go, well, this isn't the body I was used to. Oh, now life's changing and my body's changing and I don't like it and it's disgusting, and it's very confusing and isolating, even though the entire bloody class is going through the same thing. It's just teenagers tend to think, well, most people, it's a bias. You think you're the minority when you're not. Everyone else seems cooler and more collected and more intelligent than you are. No, you are too. It's just that you're in your own head. You can see the behind the scenes. You're seeing the duck's feet paddling. Everyone else is just the smooth duck floating above the water, if you will. So gender dysphoria at this age, I think, is more akin to body dysmorphia. Eating disorders are so common for teenagers. It is this desire for control. Little anecdote which I think might be relevant here is when I was a teenager, cutting and anorexia, I was towards the end of that, but when I was entering high school, cutting was the big thing. Everyone was emo. I was hanging out with the emos, and yeah, being able to show all these scars on yourself, that was seen as cool. And we also glorified certain mental illnesses. We thought that schizophrenia, dissociative identity disorder, oh, they're so cool, they're so dramatic. And this is an eternal thing with teenagers. They feel like if I had something serious, then people would listen to my teenage angst. Then people would understand. Crawling in my skin, these wounds, they will not heal. That is the anthem of the teen experience. Everyone feels that way, and it's perfectly normal. And you also have to take into account that teenagers are entering, for the first time, a period in their life where they're socially aware. in a way that children aren't. So one moment, you're a kid, you're running around in your undies, getting mud all over yourself, hair sticking up, you just got out of bed and then you were riding your bike in the street, you have no idea what your hair's doing. And you don't care. And you won't care for many more years. Until one day, when you're about 11 or 12, some kid at school, one of the neighbor's kids, is like, what are those? Those shoes are so gay, they're so shit, you know? For me, it actually happened a lot younger. I remember I was about, 7 or 8, and Mum had made Jordan and I these matching polar fleece tracksuit things. Very comfy. Great for winter. They were blue and they had teddies on them. Anyway, we were over at the neighbor's kid's house, and he's like, what are you wearing? That's fucking gay. He was only a couple years older than us, maybe 9 or 10 years old. But it was the moment I went down, oh, my mum made this. Is it bad? Having no context. And so when you're entering high school, suddenly, oh, I gotta have the Yeezys, I gotta have the Nikes, I gotta have every freaking brand label thing, because that's how I show that I am worthy of social respect, and it's social currency, basically. And transitioning is another thing. It's a social contagion, some people say. So we should add that to the list of things that you should think about if your teenager is thinking they're gender dysphoric, is do they have other friends who have the same thoughts? They're saying that they're transgender, and now your kid's saying they're transgender, and there's like 3 or 4 of them in a group. They're all saying they're transgender. If that's true, move school. Okay, maybe that's not practical. If you can, great. And I have heard some parents of kids who've now detransitioned, they moved, they picked up their whole life, or they let the kid spend time on the farm or camping, something in the outdoors, something to bring them back to their bodies. And I very much agree with that, actually. For me, weirdly, it was about learning about nutrition, and also learning how to butcher my own meat. That made me so aware of nature and biology, and it just sort of, all of the issues I had, my insecurities and squeamishness about the human form, just went away. Because I just went, this is, you're taking this, in my case, rabbit apart, and you're just seeing all the inner mechanics and just go, okay, yeah, that's just what we are. The circle of life, very, very, very natural. Okay, maybe you are not keen on hunting or butchering animals or any of that. But no, there is so much evidence to show that a lot of this gender dysphoria is just a detachment from the body. Too much time indoors, not enough vitamin D or fresh air, not enough social interaction, too much time on the internet. If your kid's spending too much time online, time to sign them up to, a sport or a hobby that gets them out of the house. And it sounds, I sound like a boomer here, like, oh, you kids with your phones and your... No, but it's true. We are animals. Not that long ago, we were upright, naked apes, wandering through the grasslands looking for danger on the horizon. Is there a saber-toothed tiger or, a leopard or whatever? Is that gonna eat me? Am I safe? In the absence of any kind of stimulus or danger, you will start to imagine, invent danger. And that's where anxiety comes from primarily. It is a chemical imbalance in the brain, but you can right it by spending more time outdoors, exercising. It might not cure it. Some people do have intense clinical lifelong conditions of anxiety and depression, but you're not doing yourself any good if you live in a darkened room all day, every day, scrolling through TikTok and Tumblr and whatever else the kids are doing these days, So for a teenager, I would allow them to experiment with their identity. No hormones, no surgery, not even worth discussing under the age of 18. They are a minor. their brain isn't fully developed. I think your brain does fully develop around the age of 25, and which might explain why I detransitioned when I did, where I just went, oh yeah, not into this anymore. It's almost like a phase, and you've probably experienced your child going through many phases where, oh, you know, Warcraft is the coolest game in the world. Oh no, now it's League of Legends. Oh no, now it's Fortnite. You know, kids go through these really intense phases, especially autistic children. They become obsessed and fixated on something. And transsexuality, it's the same. It's, oh, this is the new popular fad. They will deny it. They'll say, oh, well, you know, I've always felt this way, you just don't understand. It's like, no, you are influenced by your surroundings just as much as anybody else. I'm surrounded by people who are going to influence me. I'm going to influence them. It's, you know, we're a melting pot. Culturally, socially, mentally. So, yeah, if they change their name and their pronouns, as long as they're real pronouns, you know, he and she, not Z and them or whatever, you know, that's trying to control other people's perception of you, and that's quite narcissistic. Also, yes, investigate for a narcissistic personality disorder, or any other mental illness, really, while they're teenagers, before they're adults and able to make their own decisions and transition. Really investigate, well, what brought you to this idea, you know? Were you bullied at school? Do you have any underlying psychological conditions? Did you move house a lot? Has the family had some kind of tragedy? Did a sibling die? Was there a divorce? Gender dysphoria is a coping mechanism. It's an escape. It gives a lot of kids hope that they are going to take testosterone, take estrogen, do all the surgeries, and this bad feeling inside is going to go away. It's a very simple solution, right? You just fixate on the things you hate and there, it's done. No, it's really not addressing the underlying issues. Children and teenagers are still prone to, well, at worst magical thinking, at best very naive and optimistic thinking. And I mean, this was even the case for me at 23 or 24 when I wanted to transition, that I was not fully informed of what was involved in transitioning. I was not diagnosed with gender dysphoria. I didn't even experience gender dysphoria that much. I just went, I would be so much happier as a man. Life would be so much easier. I don't like being sexually harassed. I don't like being objectified. My mother doesn't treat me as a human being. She only sees me as a doll that she can dress up, a little mini me. I clearly have a lot of mummy issues. Never once came up in any therapy session. So I would also, during this time, talk to my teenager about the realistic outcomes of transitioning. You know, if you take these hormones, you are taking them for life. You are increasing your risk of stroke and heart disease, and I think diabetes and cancer and all these things, twice as much as someone who is born of the sex that you want to become. And the surgeries are experimental. But there are people who out there claiming, oh no, it's fine and it goes just fine. It's totally fine. Actually watch videos of people who have gone through either the phalloplasty or the vaginoplasty, and they will act like, oh, it's so great, oh, it's magical, but you actually listen to what they're saying. You know, they're smiling like, oh, it's so cool. They have to keep getting revised. There's leaking fluids. Things are prolapsing. Things are inverting. Things are closing. Things are opening where they shouldn't be. And it's just horrifying. It's absolute barbarism. It should not be legal to perform these surgeries. They are not safe. Look at the statistics. They are not safe, especially in the long run. And especially, I would say, the phalloplasty. So, a vaginoplasty is the construction of a vagina. And it's easy to make an outie into an innie. There are lots of complications there too. You can be made of colon, so it just smells like butthole, and it can get infected, gangrene, all that. But that is actually technically easier than making a penis. It's just a noodle. It's not a penis. It's a penis. It's a little noodle. They can enlarge the clitoris, or they can do a surgery where they just release the clitoris further. So those aren't so bad. There's different options there. But where they actually start Frankenstein style taking chunks of flesh off your arm or your leg and then constructing a penis, that is very manipulative of a surgeon. They are taking advantage of someone who is mentally vulnerable, that they really feel that they need a penis, and they're given something that is not a penis, doesn't look good, doesn't look like anything like a penis, frankly. And these patients are just convinced, oh yeah, this is good. Yeah, I'm happy with this. Yep. Just spent, the price of a Tesla. Could have bought a car with this money. Just wasted it on... I mean, I didn't waste it. It's great. It's good. This is a good penis. This is the best penis I've ever seen. You know, that's what they're like in these videos on YouTube, on TikTok. They're like, it's great. It's so worth it, guys. You should try it. Don't. Freaking don't. I just don't think that it's there yet. I don't think that it's good enough, and I don't think these procedures should be done, frankly. If someone really wants to go ahead and do it, go ahead, but I do not endorse it. I just want to say that. So go through all that with a teenager. Just really go through, this is it for the rest of your life. If there are negative symptoms, which I had a lot of negative symptoms with testosterone. So if you've got an autoimmune condition, so if you or your child has any kind of autoimmune condition, no hormones. Absolutely no, do not. Whoa, really, really bad. Because I have chronic fatigue syndrome. So, I mean, I think all of my problems are basically autoimmune. You know, when I was 11, I got gastro. Then I had the autism symptoms, IBS, all of that. When I was 21, I got bitten by a mosquito, got Balmer forest virus, and then I got chronic fatigue syndrome. So this is all autoimmune related. Hopefully nothing happens when I'm 31, because it seems like 11, 21, 31. Yeah, it will really ruin your immune system if it's already compromised. And that's the case for me. I developed Sjogren's syndrome after taking testosterone, and I had a couple of good years. You know, I was bodybuilding, I felt amazing. And then I got a cold. And that was it. For 5 years, I got worse and worse and worse. And I talk about this in other videos. I was in a wheelchair, I could barely eat, I was so ill, couldn't work. I've lost 5 years of my life. I was so addicted to it. And that's another thing. This is point number, 20. It's addictive. It might not be an addictive substance in the normal way, but psychologically you will form an addiction to the high that you will get from escaping your life as your biological sex. And these are the realities that the trans community doesn't want you to know about. They will not tell a child, hey, this is a very big decision. This is lifelong. This is gonna have consequences. The other thing about surgery I forgot to mention. Especially with biological women, when you remove so even having hysterectomy can have complications, because those muscles, those organs all up in there are there for a reason. They're holding everything in place, you know. It's like removing the engine mounts and expecting the engine to stay in the engine bay of your car. They were there for a reason. So, in conclusion, for the teenage segment, I think a lot of it is body dysmorphia, and it is social dysphoria. It is a child turning into an adult, going through this very awkward phase of their life, learning to be an adult, learning to be a man or a woman, trying to figure out who they're attracted to, if they want children. And I don't think anyone under the age of 18 really knows if they want kids or not. I think a lot of them do change their minds. So, all that's worth investigating. Also, I forgot to mention before we move on to adults, periods. If your daughter has very bad periods and, suffers with that every month, that can also be a factor in why she hates being a woman. So, another thing to think about. I mean, birth control also has its side effects too, so yeah, I don't specifically have any recommendations. I just deal with it. I just push through it for now. I'm trying to find... I mean, my periods aren't too bad lately, although when I first detransitioned, they were pretty rough. And if they get bad again, I don't know. Hope that my future employers have menstrual leave? I don't know, is that a thing? Can we make that a thing? I would say, for all children under the age of 18, stay away from gender clinics. They are basically recruitment centers, like Scientology or something, They are going to tell you, oh yes, your child is gender non-conforming, so here's some things you can take, and here's some procedures you can put your kid through. No. Everything but under the age of 18 should all just be exploratory or explorative therapy. It should just be, why do you feel this way? How do we help you accept your body? Because that's the thing. It's not natural to hate your own body. It's natural to be gay. It's natural to be attracted to somebody and want to spend the rest of your life with a person. That's perfectly natural. Don't care what the Christians say about me. It's not perfectly natural to be filled with such hatred of your own body, such disgust that you're never truly comfortable, that you don't even want to look at yourself. That's not normal. You should be trying to guide your child towards accepting themselves. Because where does it end? Well, you cut your penis off, you add some tits, you take hormones. Oh, but you still kind of look like a man. Oh, you get some feminization surgery. You keep going. And there's no getting off that train. The further you go down, there is just no end to it. And for me, I came to the realization that it's never good enough. I'm 5'3". I was actually passing as a man somehow, but I was not the man I envisioned. I was not Captain America. I was a little scrawny thing. I mean, I built a lot of muscle, and I'm glad I did, because it's gotten me through 5 years of being bedbound or housebound. I'm still relatively strong. Although, when I first started learning to drive manual, I had lost enough strength that just pushing down the clutch was painful. But yeah, I was never going to be Steve Rogers. But I was so delusional when I transitioned that I really thought I was going to change. And I think at the time, if you'd sat me down and said, you're not really going to look like 100% like a man. But, no, that's fine. Yeah, no. But mentally, I don't think it really sunk in. I don't think I really understood. So you should be wary of the medical system. And I've been screwed over by the medical system 6 ways to Sunday. And they are pharmaceutical shills. A lot of them are. My endocrinologist, I'm very certain, and I have a friend who is a nurse who can support this. This woman gives a lot of talks doing a hard sell on hormones for menopausal women, for transsexuals. She also pushes weight loss medications, which are also bullshit, by the way, and don't take those. Yeah. This woman did not care about my well-being. Never once did she really care. All she wanted was my money. She wanted me to continue to go there and get a prescription for testosterone, which was making me sick. It was making me mentally and physically ill. And you can watch my other videos to know exactly how it affected me. But all of this is largely experimental, especially Lupron and these puberty blockers. And it's supposed to be prescribed to people with precocious puberty or endometriosis. And so many women who have taken this for endometriosis have said it was worse than the endometriosis itself. It's given them lifelong problems. They stopped taking it after, a couple of weeks, couple of months. Years later, they're still ruined. I can't believe it hasn't been taken off the shelves. And I'm just looking on Wikipedia now for puberty blockers. So the National Health Service in the UK has been sued by patients for allowing transgender children access to treatment by puberty blockers. In April 2021, the US state of Arkansas passed a ban on treatment of minors under 18 with puberty blockers, though it was at least temporarily blocked by a federal judge. There is criticism regarding issues of informed consent and limited research support for the use of puberty blockers on transgender children. And yes, these were prescribed before it was ever really tested. It was not used for this purpose, and you can look into the story, I'll put a link, but yeah, it was basically one doctor said, I know this stuff delays puberty, and there's these trans kids who, they can't transition yet, but maybe we can just put a pause on puberty. No. Human beings can't really modify anything in their biology without there being some kind of consequence. There's always a consequence. Even just the invention of the light globe or screens that project blue light. We are creatures of nature. And so that blue light affects our circadian rhythms. That's why one of the many reasons why insomnia is worse now than ever. So imagine, so that's just a light, a blue light, just the color blue. Imagine what it's like when you take medication that's going to stop a really fundamental and important point in sexual development that is supposed to happen and is never normally delayed. It has all sorts of issues, and not just bone density and fertility. Maybe your kid doesn't want kids. How would they know as a child, first of all? If that had happened to me, I would be devastated. I really, really want a child, and that would have been taken away from me because I was gender non-conforming. It's barbaric. It affects neurological development. I have heard anecdotally that children who had precocious puberty who were put on it have anxiety to this day. They're just not right. These are very, very severe medications, and there's no need, because you know what? It doesn't change anything. Babies are not the same. Boy and girl babies are not identical. They're exposed to different hormones in the womb. They have XX or XY chromosomes. And don't give me this nonsense, there's intersex people and they're somewhere. No, you're either an intersex man or an intersex woman. And that means that without medical intervention, your body is probably going to present as one gender or the other, sex or the other. You're not just a nothing. In mammals, you can never be a nothing. We aren't fish, we aren't lizards. And so, look at Jazz Jennings, a very famous, very tragic case of a child being transitioned from, I think, the age of 8. They put him on puberty blockers and then had the vaginoplasty by the age of 18. He basically went from being a little gay boy who liked to wear dresses to, I guess I'm a girl now and I have a reality show that follows me around. There's a lot of pressure here and my mother's a narcissist and controls my whole life. And just, really spiraled out of control real quick, and I can't believe no one intervened. This poor kid is held up as this trans icon. All I see is a kid who's been abused. If you look closely, that's a little boy. Sounds like a little boy. Looks like a little boy. It's because he has XY chromosomes. He already went through male development before he was even born. Delaying puberty only delays certain changes, but not everything. Pausing puberty has no advantages. Absolutely no advantages. Because you're still that sex that you were born to. And you're not assigned sex, you are that bloody sex. You don't get to choose, no one assigns it to you. Once you turn 18, I mean, you're still developing. So I would say still wait till you're about 21, 25. There is absolutely no rush, because earlier intervention, even though the surgeons, of course, the greedy surgeons and the pharmaceutical shills, the gender clinics, I'm going to go out and say, I'm not mincing words here. Anyone who would do this to a child does not have the child's best interests. They are not an ethical practitioner and should have their license revoked. Ironically, right now, if someone is against transitioning a child, they are at risk of getting their medical license revoked. So it's this absolute... it's a mess. It's a joke. It's disgusting. So, long story short, I would avoid exposing my child to the trans community or teenager. It is very cult-like, it is very manipulative, it forces people to use certain language. I think there's a lot of high schools and stuff that have these safe spaces, these queer spaces specifically, and I think it's kind of an echo chamber. It's just encouraging these feelings and this obsession. If you give your kids something else to do, rather than obsess all day, every day about, oh, I'm not enough of a man or I'm not enough of a woman, it is kind of a narcissistic thing. Like, why do you care so much about how other people perceive you, or why does it matter so much how your body looks? It's obsessive. I mean, yes, everyone thinks about their body and how they're seen by others to an extent, but I've talked to many trans people, especially before or in the early days of their transition, and they change. They become so obsessed. They are very difficult to talk to or rationalize with. I've lost a friend recently. She has cut off communication with me because so she is a trans woman, although now she's saying she's non-binary, trans, feminine, and I mean, she's 23, so I guess that's a nice segue into adulthood, where she says she's always felt like a woman. I'm going to say she, because I assume that's what she still wants to be called. I always felt like a woman, but has a very conservative Christian upbringing. Is very childlike. I mean, she's quite mature when you have a conversation with her, but I went over to her house. She still lives with her parents. And I went over to her house, and her bedroom looks the same as it did when she was a little boy. When she was about 7. Those little wooden block letters that has her name spelled out on her door. She's still got them. She's still got... Why would you not? I've been in many houses like this where the bedroom just looks the same as it did when they were a young child. I was like, well, did you move out of home before puberty? What? Were you bringing boyfriends and girlfriends in it? I don't understand. I notice boys or men do this more than women do. And that's where I feel like, well, yes, you're a trans woman, but there's still these subtle things you do that are more like a man. She started taking a low dose of estrogen. Her family didn't support it, but they weren't terrible about this. Like, I'm worried about the side effects, which at the time I wasn't even aware of. I'm like, oh, hormones are fine. I was still a trans man myself. Oh, it's not that bad. No, it was secretly ruining my life. I just had no idea. And yeah, her personality totally changed. She just really didn't want to have these conversations. In the early days, she was very open with me, and we would have these debates, these difficult debates about, well, why do you feel this way, or why would you want to do this? And the last thing I asked her was, well, if you're non-binary, which I don't think is a real thing, first of all, explain what non-binary is. And she gave me this big, long, convoluted explanation of, because I don't want to be defined by one thing or the other, and so when I feel feminine or when I feel masculine, I don't have to be defined by boundaries, man. I was like, that's cult talk. That's not real life. No one feels their gender, you just are your gender. I mean, the best example I could think of is, how does it feel to be Australian, or American, or British, or wherever you're from in the world? Every day, do you roll out of bed going, yes, I'm beginning another day as an Australian, and I'm now making coffee as an Australian. I am now washing my hair as an Australian. Like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm just an Australian. It's like a fish, and you ask them, what does water feel like? And they're like, what's water? What's wet? I don't know. They've constantly been immersed in it. And I mean, actually, that's a good analogy, because I'm Australian. Never really left Australia, so I don't know what makes me different. I mean, I have spoken to people. I've got a lot of international friends that I talk to online, but it's very different to actually going to another country and then living there and realizing, oh, yeah, wow, I'm so different. Tying back into being transgender. So when I was living as a man, same thing. I've traveled to this new country, Man Island, and realizing, oh, wow, men are gross. Ew, wow, I'm not a man. I'm really not a man. But then at the time I was so delusional, like, but I'm better than a man. I'm not a woman. I'm like man 2.0, you know? Some real cases of transsexuals, I think, are very convincing. And yeah, maybe they are different. We don't have... The thing is, we just don't have the diagnostic ability. We don't have the information to know what really makes a real transsexual different from someone who is just experiencing social dysphoria, whatever you want to call it, body dysmorphia. And maybe there is no difference, but from my experience, there seems to be... I can tell. There are what I call the trans trenders, the people who act like they're trans, but they're really not. It's just a phase, it's just them experimenting. And it is really scary if you do have a kid who's going through this, who is of the age of consent, who is 18 years or above. How do you stop them? You know, society is not supporting you. I mean, attitudes are changing now, but for the most part, you're still made to feel like, oh, you're transphobic, you're unsupportive. If you don't let your kid transition, they'll commit suicide. And that's the other point I forgot to mention. That's not true. That is emotional blackmail. And actually, if you talk about suicide more around a child, you're making them think about suicide, and then you're making them more likely to commit suicide. Not a good idea. Yeah, they're not going to kill themselves. And that's why they say, oh, you got to put them on puberty blockers and you got to do this. How about, if my kid is suicidal, maybe we fucking address that, you know? Instead of disrupting their normal endocrine system for the rest of their lives, which could increase their depression and anxiety, citations down below, maybe we should talk and figure things out, come to an understanding. Therapy. That's what therapy used to be. Therapy didn't used to be like, I don't know, ordering drugs like it's Amazon, you know? So you really can't control an adult's behavior or decisions, and if you do press too hard, you are going to push your child away, and that's what happened with my mother and I, where she just wasn't, I mean, still isn't, she isn't, I do think she has narcissistic personality disorder, and she isn't really able to see things from other people's perspective. She tends to deal with issues by screaming at you and hoping that that will get you to change your behavior. So yeah, don't do what my mom did. She probably should have spent more time talking to me just about why. Where is this coming from? Because I really did not get much pushback. My mom just said no, but it wasn't, okay, where is this coming from? You are autistic. And she did mention, you know, you go through phases, you obsess over these male characters, and I do. She was right about that. At the time I was obsessed with Super Wholock, who was Supernatural, Doctor Who, and Sherlock Holmes. If your child was displaying gender dysphoria before the age of 18, I think that's a good thing, because then you can slowly discuss without worrying about them sneaking out and doing anything against your will. But if it comes on suddenly, like it did for me at the age of 23, that's rapid onset gender dysphoria, which the trans community tries to dismiss, but no. Gender dysphoria is quite natural, and it can happen at any stage of life, and in most cases, it doesn't last forever. And I've got a statistic down here. A study of 14 young people with gender dysphoria who were ejected from puberty suppression due to psychological or environmental factors found that at follow-up 1 to 7 years after the original application, 11 of 14 didn't feel any regret about not undergoing gender confirmation. This result is significant because most youth who receive puberty blockers proceed to the full medical protocol of gender-affirming care. For example, one UK study showed that 98% of 44 patients aged 12 to 15 proceeded to start hormone therapy after 3 years of taking puberty blockers. The same study, which to date is the only attempt to replicate De Vries and colleagues, found no evidence of change in psychological function with gender reassignment treatment, including measures of distress and self-harm. And you also hear the trans community and so-called specialists claim that only 8% of trans people detransition. This is a number they throw around all the time. Only 8% of people regret transitioning. That's so rare. I mean, 8% is a lot. Even if there are only 100 people who ever regretted it, that's 100 people whose lives are permanently ruined. That doesn't happen with, experimenting with your sexuality, for instance. The trans rights activists actually intervene with a lot of studies, or they try to discredit these studies. If their point of view is so true, why do they need to fight against the studies? But yeah, I tried to dig into the source of this only 8%. So I found the origin. I'll link to the full report, but it was a survey undertaken by people only in the United States. The 2015 US Transgender Survey is the largest survey examining the experiences of transgender people in the United States, with 27,000, a little over, respondents from all 57 states. So it's American only, 27,000, and the survey was distributed through queer groups. It says additional acknowledgement goes to more than 300 transgender, LGBT, and allied organizations that promoted and distributed the survey to its members throughout the country for completion. If someone has detransitioned, they're not in those spaces anymore. They are probably sickened at the idea of being around those spaces. So where were these detransitioners being recruited from? It never mentions that. It might have been, it's someone was in the queer space and then they knew a friend who detransitioned. Yeah, that's how I'm imagining it. I don't think they went out and specifically recruited detransitioners to this survey. So, questionable. And it was just one study conducted in 2015. I am willing to bet that the number of detransitions has skyrocketed since then, because in 2015, I think I was just starting to transition. I have a note here that says that the rate of transition went up by 5,000% in the last 10 years. Listen to any doctor who's brave enough to be honest about this situation, and they'll tell you this is not normal. They used to do exploratory therapy. I keep getting that one wrong. I know, I've heard it said a few different ways, and it's just a difficult one to say. They didn't used to do affirmation therapy. It was these trans rights activists who got involved with the politics and got involved with medicine, and those things should never mix. They are trying to make things easier for real cases of transsexuality. Bugger everybody else. Anyone caught in the crossfire, doesn't matter. Detransitioners, you don't matter. You're an idiot. You did this to yourself. Okay, I did it to myself, but I was mentally ill. I thought you guys were all, supportive and be kind to people with mental illnesses. Oh, no, but if you're a detransitioner, you just deserve to die, basically. And yeah, any doctor will say most kids outgrew this. Very, very few people went ahead and transitioned or felt they needed to. It generally passes on its own. A lot of them grew up to be gay. And there are more and more of us every single day. Go on the detrans subreddit, and there are about 22,000 people in there right now. And maybe not all of them are detransitioners. Maybe some people are researchers or doctors or related to someone who's detransitioning. But we can say that's a pretty good rough estimate. There are thousands. And if there are thousands of people who have been put through this torture, that's wrong. And we need to change policies to make things safer and better. And I also don't think trans people are being treated properly as well. The solution is not to break down those barriers and to let them transition without question. You need, even if you're a real trans person, real, however you want to define real. So I even think the most severe cases of gender dysphoria needs to go through all those steps. It needs to go through very thorough therapy. Were you raped? Were you abused by your parents? Did you deal with homelessness, illness, anything? We need to address all of that before we can build from a stable foundation to allow you to transition. And there's just nothing like that out there right now. And the other thing too about that survey is, well, the ones who detransition, they don't come back. They just go, because gender clinics don't want anything to do with detransitions. They'll help you do all this to yourself. They won't help you undo it. No, because it doesn't happen, you see. So I guess that's everything I can say about the dangers of puberty blockers, of socially transitioning a child. With adults, I guess, try to reason with them. As I was saying before, if they were dysphoric before turning 18, then at least you have some time to explore these issues. But once if it comes on when they're an adult, you've basically just got to walk on eggshells and just kind of go, you sure? Talk to their friends, get them on your side, hopefully. But I don't think it should just be on the shoulders of parents. And, until the medical system changes, what I would like to see is all these queer spaces, these teen support spaces, centers, communities, they should have a space for detransitioners. Detransitioners should be given space to give talks about their experiences. Because the biggest issue, I think, is we aren't seeing both sides of the story before a lot of these kids are making this decision. Detransitioner stories are often suppressed. And I remember finding detransitioner videos well after I transitioned. I wasn't looking at it before I transitioned, but once I'd been living happily as a man, I watched these videos and went, how do you make that mistake? How do you not know? How could you be so stupid to think you were trans and you aren't? What a fucking moron I was. I didn't know myself. I was mentally ill. I was so detached from reality. So I was seeing these stories, but it wasn't getting through to me. And also it was because of the way it was presented too, that, oh, these are just one-off cases. It's very rare. I just was not truly aware. And, I wasn't a kid. I was in my early 20s. I was not truly aware of what I was doing to my body, all the dangers. So we just need more education out there. That's why I'm out here making these videos. That's why I am getting involved in a lawsuit, and other detransitioners are as well. We need this information out here, and we need parents to have a space where, and there are some forums that are good for this. I think Fourth Wave Now is one of them. We need those spaces where we go, my doctor's telling me all this nonsense about I should transition my child, and they haven't even gone through puberty yet, and yeah, we need to be able to be critical. We need to be able to have these debates because people's lives, their futures are on the lines here. And I'm just so thankful that I did this to myself well into my adulthood. Because I don't know how I would deal with having lost body parts, having permanently rendered myself incontinent or infertile or unable to orgasm. I mean, that might still be the case. I've never orgasmed, and all I did was take testosterone. So that, you know, it could be a lot worse, but god damn, it's frustrating. So yeah, I mean, I still have a sex drive. I still enjoy having sex, but it's just, you know, the roller coaster's going up, and then you go back down. Yay. But look, if that's the worst case scenario, that's what's happened to me. I can still have kids, I can still have a normal relationship otherwise, good. But, you know, if you tried talking to me about this stuff when I was in my early 20s, well, I'm not interested, I'm asexual, I'm not interested, I'm not attracted to anyone, I don't even masturbate, or I don't even want kids are disgusting, gross, ew, who would want children? You know, you can't have that mature conversation with someone who is simply not mature. You know, you cannot talk to a child, someone who is allowed to take these puberty blockers and hormones before the age of 18. You are not going to be able to have that conversation with them of, yeah, but when your biological clock starts ticking, you know, when you hit about 25 or 30, and you start feeling like you want to settle down, find a partner, you start to feel like that's the important things in life. You're going to be comfortable with the decisions you've made right here and now as a 17-year-old. They can't. They are mentally not capable of thinking like an adult because they are not adults. In the interest of fairness, I talked to the other detransitioners and I wanted to see if they felt any benefits from hormone replacement therapy or surgeries as well. And, well, from my own personal experience, I've talked about this in other videos, I hated my high squeaky voice. I just sounded like an idiot child. I was not confident. I was very skinny, just incredibly tiny. It was strange. I didn't look anorexic or underweight, but I was just like a little canary, little bird. And taking testosterone, like Captain America, got a lot stronger, a lot thicker. I felt more confident. I have a deeper voice. I love my voice. I love the sound of my own voice. I could listen to myself talk all day, which is good because I have to listen to myself when I'm editing for hours. I have like 6 podcasts. I don't edit all of them myself, but yeah, I'm very familiar with the sound of my own voice in a way that I don't think most people are. Yeah, I've heard similar things from other detransitioners that some women are happy to have had top surgery because breasts just made them uncomfortable, and a lot of them are lesbians. So I think there's a lot of different standards for how to be when you are gay. Gay men are more accepting of femininity in men in a way that just isn't acceptable amongst straight men. So I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend anyone go on just a short trial of hormones just to see what happens. You know, I think you need to be properly screened. But I don't know. Speaking from my own experience and then experiences of others, maybe some people did need to go through that. Maybe some people can be improved and can actually come to accept their biological sex by taking cross-sex hormones. Ironically, there's absolutely no research on this, there's no evidence to support this claim, but I just want to put it out there that, I don't know, maybe it'll help you mellow out, accept yourself, fix the insecurities you had. I realize, yes, I wanted to be more butch, technically, but I didn't want to be a man. And no one made that distinction for me. And, yeah, as I've mentioned, taking testosterone and then stopping finally gave me a libido. So that's also a positive outcome. So I'm not going to lie and say it's all bad, it's all dangerous. And it is. There's a lot of bad things, there's a lot of danger. But yeah, it can help in some cases. And thankfully, if you do take cross-sex hormones after you've completed puberty, the effects aren't too bad. The effects aren't too permanent. But again, I don't recommend it, but that's just worth considering. I think it's worth mentioning. You know, I'm not going to lie and just show, you know, it's all black or it's all white. I never want to do that. So I think that about covers everything, but if you have more questions, put them down below in the comments section. I have no life, so I will respond pretty quickly if it's during the day in Australia. So go ahead. But until next time, thanks for watching, and see ya, Space Cowboys.